In this video I'm going to show you how to replace the rotors and brake pads on a 1999 GMC Yukon. Alright, before we get started, you're going to have some basic tools, floor jack, a jack stand, a tire iron to get the lug nuts off, mechanics tools, and then this is really important, you're going to need a clamp to be able to compress the piston in the brake caliper. Just pre-loosen the lug nuts. Then I jacked the truck up, put the floor jack underneath it, and I've got chocks in the back tires to keep the truck from rolling away. Changing the brake pads on your vehicle is just normal maintenance. You don't necessarily have to change your rotors very often. Just kind of want to look at a few things. One, is there major grooving going on with your rotors? In this case I do have some. But the main problem with my truck, you can hear that noise, it's what I hear every time I drive this vehicle, but the main problem is there's actually a crack in my rotor, and so this rotor's junk. I'm going to have to replace it. But in some cases, if you have a pretty decent looking rotor but you have some grooving, you can take it into a shop and they can turn it and get the grooves out of the rotors, and you can have basically a brand new rotor. But these only costed like 25 bucks, 22, 25 bucks or something like that at AutoZone. So we're just going to go ahead and replace these. I have to, because these are junk, and then we'll get these brake pads. So let's get started. Alright, to get the rotors off and the brake pads, we've got to take the caliper off. And there are two bolts. There's one here and one directly below it, right down here, that we've got to loosen in order to get this caliper off. Now the bolt's interesting because it's like a female end bolt. So we've got to get this 3/8 inch hexagon shaped socket to go inside there to loosen it. So we'll get these out and get the caliper off. Got my other floor jack sitting right here. I'm just going to take my caliper and rest it on that so it's not hanging by the brake line. But that's all I got to do is take the caliper off, and then the rotor slides right off. Alright, here we're going to look at the brake pads. This is a AutoZone product. It's MKD 369. What we're going to do is take your pads out and just kind of take them and compare them to what comes off the car. Make sure they match. Just remove the old pads, and they're in here with some springs. There we go. Okay. And these are also spring loaded. See, the feeler is broken off this thing. That's how bad this is. I mean, that is horrendous. You should never let your pads go down that low. When your feeler is hitting the rotor, that's a good indication of, hey, it's time to replace your brakes. Well, they quit squealing whenever that feeler gets off there, and I guess you just kind of forget about it, but that's a good indication to replace your brake pads when that squealer is going off. With the brake pads out, next thing we got to do is take this piston in the caliper here and compress it. That way we can get the new pads in. The new pads will have a nice thick pad on it on both sides, and then the new rotor is going to be a nice thick new rotor, brand new. So in order to account for all this extra width in our system here, we got to compress this all the way back, and that way we can get our caliper to slide right onto the new rotor. To do that, it's really easy. Just take your clamp, slide that in there, and just start cranking, and that piston will go back into the caliper there, and will give us some room we need to get the new pads and rotors on. You can see the difference between the used and the new, and the reason why we need to compress the piston. But yeah, try not to let your brakes get this bad before you replace them. One of the things that you can do to keep your brakes from being real squeaky is to get some of this brake lubricant. You want to put these on the points of your brake pads that contact the metal on your caliper, And just doing that will kind of keep it lubricated and keep anything from really squeaking. You don't have to do it, but it's just one way to keep the squeaks down on your brakes. This would be a good spot to put some of that brake lubricant right here, because you can see that's where the track that brake pad will slide up back and forth in when the piston contracts. It's awfully stiff right there, stuck. Probably lubricate that pretty good. Alright, here's my new rotor. Again, it's an AutoZone product. It's 5569 part number. It'd be a good idea to spray some brake cleaner on the new rotor. Usually these new parts, they put just a little bit of oil on them so they don't rust when they're on the shelf. So give that a quick spray. Get rid of any oil. Okay, what I like to do is just put a couple of lug nuts on just to get it to where it will sit flush. That way I'm not fighting it whenever I'm putting the caliper on. Alright, there we go. I'm going to put those two bolts in and get the tire back on. Just going to tighten these down, hand tight, pretty snug. Okay, that should do it. I like to put just a little bit of WD-40 on the threads before I put my lug nuts back on. Before you take off in your vehicle, you're going to want to pump your brakes a few times. Remember, we got that piston compressed inside that caliper. So you want to pump your brakes, push that piston back out, get it right where it needs to be able to operate properly. With your brake pads, you're going to want to replace them a lot sooner than I did. It was kind of my bad for letting them go too long. Again, with your rotor, you want to look for deep grooving, possibly even cracks in your rotor. If that makes them junk, just go ahead and replace them. If you've got some light grooves, you can probably just leave it alone and put new pads on. If you're not comfortable with it, you can take it in someplace and have them turn it. I'm not sure exactly how much that costs, but that is an option for you. Again, $22.50 or $25, something like that for this rotor. Not that expensive to have all new brakes, front end brakes on this truck. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. Thanks for watching, and God bless.